Well, good morning, everyone. It is still morning. Sometimes it really feels like morning. So, I'm a past president of PFLAG, Parents, Family, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. And that's how I wanted to start out this morning, just talking about the organization as a whole. And then I'll go into some personal stuff later. But our mission statement is to support during the coming out process, which for those of you who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, you know what that means. It's just being able to talk openly about it with your family or friends or whatever. But support is very important during that because you never know what reaction you're going to get when you talk to somebody about it. So that's where we come in. We educate about LGBT issues throughout the community, throughout the gay community, throughout any community. We've spoken to classrooms, college classrooms, which is very interesting to speak to students that are going for counseling or medical schools, whatever. And then we advocate for full human and civil rights for everyone, not just people in the LGBT community, but everyone. We meet the second Sunday of every month at Village Presbyterian Church. We have a program. We have snacks. We have time for support if you need, if you have a specific question or concern or need, we're there for you. We also have a support meeting that happens the fourth Sunday of every month, the Like Me Lighthouse, which is a community center started by Shelley Wright, the country music singer, who came out about, 8 years ago, something like that, publicly. And we meet there the fourth Sunday, and it's just strictly discussion group. If you find out more about PFLAG, or if you have a specific need in a smaller group setting. At the church, we generally have 25 to 40 people there, and it can be kind of intimidating to walk into a group. Just like coming into a group like this for the first time could be intimidating. So, but I believe that is all that I want to share about PFLAG itself right now, and then I would like to introduce Carolyn Finken-Dove.
My name is Carolyn Finken-Dove. I'm the mother of a gay daughter, and for your protection, I have written my comments because I tend to be a rambler and kind of veer far afield. So in order to stay true to our time frame here, I have some written comments. So bear with me. First, I want to thank Oasis for the invitation to speak. Fear based on lack of or incorrect information is at the core of much of the discriminatory language and behavior affecting the LGBT community and those who love them. And I'm grateful for all of you wanting to know more. A little bit about me and my family. My husband Glenn and I are a blended family. Between us, we have 3 daughters. Our oldest, Sarah, was married a little over a year ago to a woman who had a 13-year-old daughter. Our middle daughter, Emily, has been married almost 12 years and just recently had a baby in November. So I became grandma twice in the past year, and I was so excited because I have waited a long time for that title. Those of you who are Grammys know what I'm talking about. So I have 2 granddaughters now, and it doesn't get much better. Our youngest daughter, Addie, is seriously dating a young man, but no marriage or baby plans that we are aware of yet. I want to tell you a little bit about my story when Sarah came out. Sarah was 20 years old and a sophomore in college. That was about 15 years ago. So if you're thinking age, trying to figure out things, just know that I'm 45. And I just want to let you know that some people don't necessarily believe in science. I don't believe in math. So Sarah was home for a visit, and I'm a school nurse, retired now. But she would frequently come to my office to visit and do some filing or help me with some paperwork. And on this occasion, she was home from college for a visit and came to my office. And she said, "Mom, there's something I need to talk with you about." And I could just tell from her tone that this wasn't one of our regular conversations. So I put down what I was doing and I turned to her and moved a little closer. And she told me that she preferred women. She had discovered that she preferred women. I wasn't completely surprised. The thought had crossed my mind a time or two in high school. But hearing it was kind of a shock. I talked to her some more. It was kind of a blur. I know that I told her I loved her several times. I know we hugged several times. And I asked her to be careful because I knew enough about the LGBT situation that she was in more danger than I would have liked. I'm forever grateful that I was able to respond positively to her disclosure. Religion seems to be a major tipping point for a lot of people. And I'm thankful, although I was raised Roman Catholic, I didn't have those negative messages sitting in my brain. I attribute this to two things. First, when I was a child, the Mass was still in Latin, so I didn't have a clue what they were saying. Second, I was a bit of a daydreamer, so even the parts that were in English kind of went right over. At the time, that probably was not what my parents might have wished, but in retrospect, I'm quite glad that that was the case. I wish I had known more. I wish I had a fraction of the information I've learned since I've been in PFLAG and been associated with different organizations. I wish I'd been a little more prepared. I wish I could have been better with my daughter when she came out, but I'm really, really glad that at least I was able not to have my attitude be one of rejection, because that happens way, way too often still. Shortly after Sarah came out, she took me with her to meet some of her friends. And this is a situation I will never forget. It's been 15 years ago, but there was a young man named Brian that she introduced me to. And Brian looked at me and said, "So this is your mom?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "And you're okay with her being gay?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Can I just ask you a question?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "Oh, sorry. Can I just have a hug?" Because his parents had completely rejected him, thrown him out, and he was no longer able to see or get a hug from his own mom. Sometime later, I went with Sarah to an LGBT summit. There were various groups and speakers, and at one point I chose a gathering, which it turned out I was the only straight person in the room. Now that doesn't happen very often. At first, when I looked around, I was a little hesitant to stay. There were kids with piercings and tattoos and, things that made me feel like these are not the kids that Sarah hung around with in high school. I was a tad judgmental, shall we say. So as the participants in the room went around and introduced themselves, they told some of their experiences, and I heard story after story after story of being called names, being tormented, being hurt, fears of entering a restroom and having others not feel you belong there. And those tough-looking young people revealed the tender, wounded souls resting inside, rejected simply for being who they were. Having a gender-variant daughter put a mirror up to some of the casual ways I had put people in categories, acceptable, not acceptable, judging many books by their covers. One of the gifts of having a gay daughter, and there are many, is that I have learned so much from PFLAG and other organizations, and I've become more accepting and less judgmental. And while the word tolerance is a good one, I want my daughter and members of the LGBT community to be celebrated, not just tolerated. Now, when I found out about my daughter, you know that people come out as gay. There's also a coming out process for parents, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I went into the closet when my daughter came out of hers. I went home and I discussed what she had told me with my current husband, but not at that time. We were dating, but not yet married. So I talked to him and cried and expressed some of my fears. And told him about her coming out to me at work. And at this point, I need to stop for a minute. If someone comes out to you, that is something that they are really trusting you with. It's important that you let them be the one to guide your coming out process. You shouldn't out anyone who's disclosed that information or whose information you think you know. It's very important for them to guide the discussion and to be the one to decide who is told and who is not, because not everyone is out to everyone. My daughter was out and proud, so that was not the problem, it was me. I realized I had gone into the closet, and part of it was a little bit of shock because I realized it made her life harder. Part of it was some guilt. Did I do something? Did I not do something that maybe contributed to her being gay? Of course I didn't. It's not something which can be changed. It's not a choice. It's not a lifestyle. And it doesn't need to be changed. After my initial conversation, I talked to my husband, and the only other people I told initially were a group of friends. We went to lunch, and the topic came up, and I said, I need to let you know that Sarah recently told me she's gay, because I didn't want there to be comments made or something said that couldn't be taken back. Fortunately, my friends also were very supportive. So after that conversation, I didn't comment too much about it to anyone else. Then my daughter Sarah got a job working for GLSEN. GLSEN stands for Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network. So when people said, what does your daughter do? I said, oh, she works for GLSEN. What does that stand for? Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education. And my voice was really just about that soft. And initially when I told the story, heads would turn when they heard the word gay. It wasn't a thing 15 years ago. It wasn't as common a word as it is now. Thank goodness it is now. But I found something, and that was that the more I said it and the more I talked, the stronger my voice got, and the easier it became, and the more people didn't turn their heads so quickly when the word gay came out. There was a coworker who at first talked about my daughter's choice, and I just kept repeating to her, no, it's not a choice. She was born that way. Eventually, that same friend started clipping articles in the paper and leaving them on my desk when there was something positive that happened for LGBT people. Other people started coming up to me and talking to me about their brother and his partner, or their cousin and her partner. It was like it opened a door for people to be able to say the word out loud and to talk about their families. And lots of people have someone or know someone who's gay. On more than one occasion, people came to me when their own children came out as gay or transgender. And in one situation, a woman who was coming out herself out of a marriage came to me for help and advice. Please speak up if you can. If you are an ally, please speak up. Don't allow people to use the phrase, it's so gay. Don't laugh or pass on gay jokes. Make comments at the lunch table. Let people know you support equality. And there's something else that goes along with this, and that's called privilege. I have the privilege of being straight in our society right now. It shouldn't be, but it is. When I go to the movies, when I see a program on TV, back 15 years ago, you couldn't expect that there would be somebody like you in those movies or TVs if you were not straight. I could walk into a movie and pretty much be assured I could see people like myself. When I start a job or move to a new residence, I don't have to worry that my coworker or my neighbor may not be tolerant. I don't have to decide whether or not to disclose that I'm straight to them. They assume. That's privilege. When I go to a restroom, I don't have to question whether or not someone there is going to think I shouldn't be in that particular restroom, that I don't belong. That's privilege. I don't have to watch my conversation. When I tell people about my weekend, I can say my husband, he, because that's acceptable. Some people have to be careful in certain circles whether or not they use the correct pronoun. This is something you may not know, but it is legal to fire from a job, deny housing, or refuse services to LGBT people in 29 states. That number is about 32 if you are transgender. And Kansas and Missouri both fall in both of those categories. There's a marriage amendment possibly going to pass countrywide now. But what that means is if you get married and your boss is anti-gay and knows you got married, that could be grounds for being fired. So we're not quite there yet. My hope is that one day, whether LGBTQ or straight, we will all just be accepted for who we are. So use your privilege to make that happen. In closing, I want to say to all of you who may be parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, anyone who is around children, be careful what you say, how you talk about the LGBTQ issues on TV or in the paper. Be careful the jokes you laugh at or repeat. Don't shame your son for wanting to wear a dress or play with a doll. If he's straight, he will grow up to be a great dad. If he's not straight, he will grow up knowing that he's accepted and loved for who he is. Either way, it's a win-win situation. That young child in front of you may grow up to be gay or transgender. You don't want them to go through that journey on their own. You want them to know you love them for who they are. And unlike most minorities, gay kids are not the same minority status as their parents in most cases. And that's something I hadn't really thought about. But gay kids do not have the same minority status as their parents. If you're black, your kids are black. You get what they're going through. Straight parents don't have that. For any of you out there who are gay, lesbian, or bisexual, your sexual orientation is neither better nor worse than straight people. It cannot be changed, nor does it need to be. If you are transgender, know that you are entitled to live as the person you know yourself to be who you are, and be proud. It is society who needs to change, not you. Thank you.
I really hate following Carolyn speaking. Again, I'm Randy Fowler, and I am a gay man, and I came out when I was about 30, late bloomer, so to speak. I came out because my uncle was diagnosed with AIDS, and we didn't know anything about his personal life, really. I mean, we were fairly close, but in early years, apparently there was some other activity that we weren't aware of, and I didn't know who was aware of it. So I ended up taking him to an AIDS support group that I found out about, which happened to meet at my church. And just knowing that when he went there, all the love and support that he received from the group gave me the courage to actually come out. I had come out to myself, but not to anyone else, and including my family. So he gave me the courage to come out to that. I came out to my parents, and then they promptly left town for the weekend. And then a friend of mine who was in a support group that met downtown that I knew about, I went down there not knowing anyone and needing some fast information on AIDS. Went down there, made a bunch of friends. They got me involved in the community, and I enjoy being out in the community, networking to know what's available, for supporting people that come to PFLAG, or people that I happen to meet at other meetings or whatever. I enjoy being able to know what's going on in the community and how we can work together. As I say in PFLAG, we're a team. We all have to find ways to work together between groups, and that's the most important. Where is Helen? How are we doing on it? Okay, thank you. And getting involved in PFLAG was one of the best things I've done. It's about 20 years ago that I was involved. And I've been different things, support and treasurer and all kinds of stuff. But just being able to see the people like Carolyn come in for the first time, and a lot of parents come in, they cannot talk. They are weepy. They're really emotional about their kids just coming out to them, maybe. And so, but every month they cry a little bit less. And eventually they get involved in leadership positions with PFLAG, or just helping people. The important thing is for people to come back and give back to the organization, because they have received so much from the organization. And we need to have new parents coming in who are in emotional turmoil. They need to be able to see people and say it gets better. It does get better. So, but we want to thank you for allowing us to come, and Carolyn has a little quiz that she'd like to talk about.
And at this point, we are ready for questions from the crowd. If there's anything you'd like to ask either Randy. You want to come up, Randy? If there are questions you would like to ask either Randy or I, we are both very open to questions. No, actually they weren't. No. My mother, who's 93, is now staying with us for a bit, but Sarah, it was sort of the same thing I felt. Sarah was her granddaughter. She's my daughter. How would I not love her, you know? They were good with it. All of my family was good with it. Actually, I have a sister who's gay who came out in college as well, and that gave them a little touch of it, you know, and she was away, so they didn't really deal with it too much. But yeah, all family was great, fortunately.
Very fortunate.
Other questions? Yes.
When you're voicing, standing up and using your privilege to advocate for people and civil rights, how do you keep calm when you encounter people who have hatred and anger or fear towards homosexuals and gays? How do you keep yourself calm while doing that?
I didn't always. When I first came to PFLAG, the reason I was there was because the marriage amendment had passed in Kansas, and I was sad, I was angry, I was frustrated, and I didn't know where to take it. I felt like there must have been something I could have done to have prevented that from happening had I just known the pathway. But I was pretty angry the first time I showed up at PFLAG. If there were new parents in the room, I don't know that there were, but if there were, I probably scared some of them because I was just angry that my daughter was being told that she wasn't entitled to the things other people's daughters were, she wasn't as good somehow. And I knew that wasn't true, had passed. But over time, and it's been 15 years, over time I've realized that you don't change opinions that way. If you push, people push back. But now when I talk to people, I've talked to legislators, and I talked to one recently who was purely conservative, and I took my family pictures and I showed him my daughter and I showed him my other daughters, and I explained why it was so important that equal rights be enforced and that marriage be equal for everyone. And he said, well, if my daughter had trouble getting a job, he would be happy to try and help her out. And I said, well, that's really nice. She seemed like a nice girl. I said, that's really nice. But there are lots of Sarahs out there, and they all need protection in finding a job. And if you talk softly to people and explain your feelings, tell them that it makes you sad when people feel that you're not as valuable as someone else. If you can be soft and talk with them, that goes way farther. It may take time. It may take conversation after conversation after conversation. But it gets there that way. Anger doesn't so much, I found that.
Also, Carolyn, being a mother of a lesbian daughter, she has the privilege, if you will, of being able to say, I support my daughter, this is my family, and I will not turn against my daughter. And, other people, that's a way of making it personal.
And I also have the benefit of not being able to be fired because I'm straight. And the person I'm defending may not have that right, so. Any other questions?
Well, each state has approached this in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep on seeing that often something would pass but get written down or slowed up or even revisited. How do you feel about the government, Supreme Court, or some legislation from somewhere from the federal level having a statement for all and having to work toward that if that's where you'd like to go? Or are you, as a community of supporters, okay with the state-by-state approach?
Oh, sorry, yes. He's asking, are we okay with Supreme Court deciding things? Are we okay with the legislature deciding things? Is a state-by-state approach okay? And my answer to the federal government and to the Supreme Court is, it depends what they decide. If they say yes, I'm all for it. But the state-by-state approach, no, because there are people who need those protections now in Salina, Kansas, or in Osawatomie, Iowa, who aren't going to get them if the people are putting this to a vote. You don't vote on the rights of minorities. That can never happen. I think it needs to be federal. I think it may need to be Supreme Court, because that's the alternative when the legislature doesn't create things that need to be.
I agree with that totally. I went to a presentation one time by somebody who had analyzed how the laws had been changed in the states where they are there, where the protections are there. And mostly it's through legislation or judicial hearings. Very rarely is it by vote. So for whatever reason, it seems strange, but you know, the votes, the popular votes are not pulling through. But the judicial regulations, their decisions are what have changed it state by state at this point. Any other questions?
Actually, there's some disagreement in the LGBT community about that as well. A lot of people felt like jobs are more important than marriage. Not everybody has somebody they want to marry, but everybody needs a job, and everybody needs a house, and everybody needs to eat in a restaurant. So there's some disagreement that shouldn't have been covered first. I'm not sure exactly how the marriage thing exactly came to be. But at this point, I'm hoping that the fact that marriage, what happens, it seems to me, is when something passes like that, there's a lot of pushback. So we're going to take a step forward, and then we'll take a step or two backwards, because the people who are anti-marriage are really going to come out with guns blazing, I'm afraid. But I'm hoping that if there is a positive Supreme Court decision, that it may be broad enough that maybe can be translated into the protections for jobs and houses and that sort of thing as well. And there's some thought that may indeed be the case. Otherwise, I'm hoping that people will see that it's necessary for people to have jobs, and LGBT people are just like straight people in all important ways.
Also, the marriage amendment, the marriage rights create a whole bunch of other rights right now that straight people have and gay people do not. Gay people cannot marry, obviously. They cannot file joint tax returns, so they're penalized. Hospital visitation is a big thing. If you don't have the correct paperwork in place, even if you are married, you can still be denied rights. I think that's a fair statement to make. You have to have the right paperwork to allow the hospital to make the decisions. If your partner is not able to make a decision, then they'll find somebody, family or something, who can. So there's what's that movie that came out? Just recently. There's a movie on YouTube that has to do with a partner who had an accident and died, and the existing the partner who lived, they were not married. But he was unable to be by his partner's side in the hospital. And if anybody can come up with the name of that movie, feel free, because I can't. Yes, sir.
Bridegroom.
Thank you very much. It's a wonderful, wonderful film. I heard the surviving partner personally speak, and he's doing very well if you see the movie. But just the fact that he could not be by his partner's side and had trouble, could not be at his partner's funeral because the family did not want him there, did not want any mention of being gay or anything there. So, but that's another thing that comes along with marriage equality. Yes?
If you're not familiar with conversion therapy, it's a belief by some people that being gay can indeed be changed with the right therapy, sometimes up to and including shock therapy. Major psychological and medical associations have come out foursquare against it. It's not only not effective, it's harmful, but Judy's asking how you can prevent that from happening if somebody underage, for example, has their parents subject them to that, and the answer is there's not much at the moment. The president did what's it called? An executive order, I believe, or stated at least that conversion therapy was not a good idea, but a lot of people aren't fans of Obama. A lot of people don't believe that that's true. So at this point, really, if you're underage and your parents subject you to that, you don't have an alternative.
Is PFLAG primarily a support organization? You guys are help organization other than obviously. You get out to do other things? You have to
We're trying to get into schools. We do trainings for counselors or social workers or whoever will have us, honestly. We try to get into the schools and into colleges and places like that. We talk before churches sometimes if we're invited. We'll talk anywhere anybody will give us 5 minutes and a microphone, honestly. But we also have a lot of resources at the meetings, and you're all, if you would like more information, you're all welcome to come and just visit a meeting and see. They're confidential meetings. We ask that everybody who attends keep what they see and hear there private, because some people are only out at those meetings. But we have movies for rent, or not for rent, excuse me, for checkout. We have books for checkout. We have lots of free literature. I hope you'll all visit over there and see if there's anything that looks interesting. There are lots of resources available, and we do try to get out in the community as much as we can and advocate as well, legislatively and otherwise. PFLAG is national. If you want it, any of the things that are on our table there are available online as well. You can read them online or print them off from online. It's www.pflag.org. It's very simple, and our local organization is www.pflagkc.org for lots of information.